Guys, I am so excited to introduce you to entrepreneur Lark Meadow. Lark is a game changer. She is a ripple maker. She is, along with her brother Doc, is making a huge push to make a real impact on climate change. Her company, Aeon Blue Technologies, actually makes carbon negative fuel. You got to hear how this works. It's fascinating. And it is going to have such a practical application for not only us as consumers, but in major industry, in transportation. And their goal is eventually to take it to space. They are doing some things at Aeon Blue that will just blow you away. But what I think will really capture you is the passion and the power of this young woman and her commitment to step into a role and into an industry, quite honestly, that she wasn't truly familiar with, but help her brother, who is the inventor of this technology and this platform called Mother, that is going to make such a huge difference for our planet. And she is stepping in as CEO and helping bring this technology to life, carry this vision forward, and make a difference in such a huge way. She is really fascinating. And I'm so grateful that she agreed to come on the Ripple Effect podcast. It was actually a ripple that sort of led us to have this interview. She had commented out of the blue for one of my prior guests, Lynn Graft, when he promoted the episode of that we had together, the Ripple Effect podcast, a few months back. And I went down the rabbit hole to learn more about what this woman and her company was doing. And I just knew this was someone that I had to bring onto the show. She was so gracious and so kind and very accommodating to make this happen. And I'm so grateful that we got her to be on the Ripple Effect podcast. So with no further ado, I can't wait for this one to kick off. Let's dive into this episode with Lark Meadow. Well, guys, I am super excited to have Lark Meadow join me today for the Ripple Effect podcast. Lark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm super excited. I appreciate your patience in all of the back and forth to try and get this scheduled. I mean, I am super pumped for today, but I am just excited to dive in and learn more about you. As I mentioned to you when we kind of kicked off earlier, one of the things that we kind of like to do with these interviews is it's just a conversation amongst friends. And even though you and I aren't friends, I suspect we're going to be after this, right?
Right.
But I had originally kind of rippled my way to you because you and I both know Lynn Graft in common. And you had commented on Lynn's post on LinkedIn when he was promoting the episode he was on for the Ripple Effect a few months back. And so I went down this rabbit hole about who you were as an entrepreneur and what kind of you're focused on. And I am deeply fascinated about this venture that you are co-founder and CEO for. Let me ask you this. I mean, what sort of led you down this path? What got you kind of inspired to go and become a co-founder for this venture?
Sure. So I did not start out in deep tech or climate tech. I didn't really know anything about this industry. And the way that I kind of fell into it is my brother. So my brother, we call him Doc. His name
Doc.
is in the Gaelic form. And so I don't speak Gaelic, and usually people don't. So we just call him Doc, just to make it easy. And so Doc, he has created a technology that makes fuel out of air and water.
Oh, wow.
And he's a little bit older than me, so he's 4 years older. And back when I was in junior high, that was the first time I heard about how he was starting to work on this invention. And then fast forward about 20 years later, he gave me a call. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I was working in film. And he said, "Hey, um, would you, this,
Hey, sis, come on.
yeah, would you be interested in helping me do this?" And at the time, I didn't feel like I was really the right person for this job. I had never, gone to school for business. I was working as a project developer and project manager in film. I was a CEO of a nonprofit that was film related. But, I'm not from the climate tech industry. And, I was wondering at the time, I was like, maybe I can help him, find somebody who's, going to be more, I guess, have the skills that he requires
Yeah.
to bring this to fruition. And I went out to Los Alamos where he was living, and he was working for LANL, so that's Los Alamos National Laboratory. And he sat me down and he explained what he was doing for about 3 hours. And then at the end, I said, "What?" And so, because he's highly technical,
Uh-huh.
and knew, even though I didn't grasp everything, just because I didn't have the terminology down, I knew at the time that he had something that was absolutely spectacular and
Yeah.
something that could really make a change in this world. So I realized that, doing a startup, you got to have a lot of grit. You got to have a lot of patience, and you have to be willing. I actually developed this term when I was working in film. It's called a comfort bubble.
Oh,
So yeah, especially working in independent film, your comfort bubble has to be so small. You have to be willing to, do all sorts of things and live in that that kind of stretch the limits,
sure.
like you're not making very much money, so driving to a set very far away, you might have to sleep in your car. There's things that you have to learn right on the spot. It's a constant learning process,
Yeah.
and your bubble seems to get a lot smaller and you're like, no, everything's fine, like I can sleep on the floor, it's
Yeah.
all good.
It's okay.
um
I have very little expectations, right?
Yeah, but that I fell in love with that process.
Yeah.
I fell in love with, like, with doing things that seem almost impossible in the beginning and creating something really just amazing with people and going through that experience and pulling together all of the elements. So that's really my jam.
Uh,
And so I realized that, I needed to be the one to work with Doc, and, and we work together to bring this to the world.
wow.
And so I made that decision, and that was about 8 years ago. So we developed the technology over time to what it is now, which is an e-fuel and carbon capture technology.
Okay, so is this tell our audience a little bit about that kind of technology. Where does it apply? How is it used today? And what are the types of industries you've found success in so far?
Sure. Okay. So, I'll kind of just break down, I think, what we do, our process, and then we can kind of maybe dig into, like, where we can take this.
Yeah.
Okay, so at Aeon Blue, we focus on two things that are essential to stopping climate change, and that is both clean fuel and carbon capture. So, what the world needs is an easy drop in fuel that is the same cost, it's the same price as fossil fuels. So, it
Mhm.
needs to be really easy. And it's something that they can just drop right into their gas tank. We also need to permanently remove a large amount of carbon from the atmosphere. So we need to do both. And that's really what our technology does. We do
Wow.
both at the same time, and it's fully integrated. It's e-fuel and carbon capture, and we call it the mother. And so we like to consider ourselves, Apple for clean fuel and carbon removal. Um, so, we have figured out a way to drive all of the energy and profit from every single step in the process, and every single product. So, what this does is it enables us to reduce our costs of production so significantly that we can make fuel at fossil prices, and it's clean fuel. So, what we do is we capture up to 7 tons of CO2 per 1 barrel of e-fuel we make. And for those of you who don't know, about carbon, that how much carbon is in a barrel, it's about 1 ton. And so what that means is that we are storing up to 6 tons of CO2 per every barrel we make. So
Wow.
because it's made at the same time, this makes our fuel up to 600% carbon negative. And so what that means is that when you choose our gasoline and you get in your car and you drive across town, you are essentially saving the planet, you're saving it for yourself, you're saving it for your kids, your families, your neighbors. But even more interestingly, and I think this is amazing, you're saving it for someone completely on the other side of the world who
Yeah.
you will never meet. So, that's really what you'd be participating in. It really is. It's almost like a crowd-funded, community-driven carbon removal system. It has no carcinogens. It has no sulfur, no lead, nitrogen, or arsenic. So it improves air quality as well. And we believe that this is the next step for a hydrogen-based economy. It's a solid next step because you can drop it right into your car. You can put it in your plane. We can go to the moon. And it costs the same as fossil oil. So
Wow.
that is our technology in a
I mean
nutshell.
that's a yeah. I mean, you make a very compelling pitch for the awesomeness of the company. I'm very very impressed. Like, so this is really targeted at consumers, or are you guys applying this more as an industry rollout? How who is actually being able to benefit from Mother right now? Is it something that our average audience member could actually go and find a place to start doing this in their own vehicle?
So eventually, over the next several years, we will start rolling out into gas stations. So
Oh wow.
we have I used to run a nonprofit organization and doing lots of community events, and then also working in film and working with different people to invest in movies. And so I'm very community driven, and so our goal is to work directly with the community, and start getting our gasoline into gas stations where the community can make a simple choice, because that's what's really going to that's what
Yeah.
we need. We need something really simple, because people really care about the environment.
Sure.
Every time I talk to people, about our technology, especially people who are not involved in the environmental industry, um, it's amazing how much people care. They say, okay, well, I recycle, and I drive a hybrid,
Yeah.
but I need to be able to do more. And there's so much passion, and there's so much care for the environment by the general public, that I want to be able to get this into people, directly into people's hands and into
Yeah.
their vehicles. Or into their barbecues. You can fire up your barbecue, or into your Harley. I mean, whatever you want to put it into.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will be working with strategic partners. As we scale. So our plan. So just to kind of back up a little bit, we have a proof of concept. So we've proven out the technology. She makes e-fuel and captures carbon from the air, and she turns that carbon into mineralized CO2. And then our next step will be going to Canada, and we're going to be building our prototype and pilot there. And then we're going to scale to our first facility, which will be 3,000 barrels a day. And that'll
Wow.
capture and store about 3.7 megatons of CO2 per year. And then we're just going to scale from there. Our plan for Canada, we would like to build up to 6 million barrels a day. And we can ship, to Europe, we can ship to the US, of course, to Canada. And then we have other sites that we're looking at around the world, strategically in the northern and southern hemispheres. And so, with strategic partners in operations and logistics and transportation, we plan to get this fuel out to the northern and southern markets. We want this, even though we don't believe that it will be available to absolutely everyone. Going up to 20 million barrels a day. That is our big goal, and that would mitigate and remove so much carbon from the atmosphere. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Well, so if I understood you correctly, technically the first manufacturing facility would be in Canada. Why Canada? Were they
Uh,
more easier to work with? Is it they buy into the concept a little bit more easy than the U.S. leadership here? Or
there's a few reasons, like the U.S. So the U.S. leadership, especially with the DOE and the LPO, they are providing some really amazing opportunities for startups, and especially if you are ready to commercialize. So if you're ready to go to your first commercial facility or second commercial facility, it's really amazing what they're doing. So they're definitely rolling it out. Canada already has some really amazing incentives in place for hydrogen and carbon capture. And they have a lot of programs available for, especially for deep tech companies that are just getting started. And so that is definitely a draw.
Yeah.
Another reason why we also go to Canada is because on the east coast of Canada, which is where we plan to go, which is like the Nova Scotia area, there is fantastic wind. So we're going to be using wind energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quality of the wind is so good, and there's a lot of land available. So for the wind turbines, so there's a lot, and then it's of course on a coast there. There's ice free ports there, so we can ship out to Europe, into the U.S. There's a lot of advantages to starting in Europe, but we are looking at the U.S. as well.
Wow. So what? I mean, maybe you can share this, and if you can't, because it's kind of the secret sauce of the business, I completely respect that. But what was the inspiration for Doc to actually go down this path initially?
um, oh boy, I think he fell in love with electrochemistry. Yeah, which was not cool back then. It was, electrochemistry has been around for a long time,
Yeah.
but it's only just starting. And, for people who don't know anything about climate tech, they probably don't know, they might never have even heard about electrochemistry. But electrochemistry, because of electrochemistry, is why we have all the things that we have today. Anything in inorganic chemistry, just about. So anything that you like, that you wear, that you drive, that you see, that you touch, that you even that you eat, there's generally some product of electrochemistry in that thing. Even just a regular table, our computers, all technology. So
Yeah.
really is it really is like a starting block, like the initial ingredients for our modern world. So I think that's what got him really excited about it. But for the planet, so our mother, she was always very planet conscious in the 90s, back when it was not very cool. So it was kind of nerdy, which was awesome. And so I remember she got us this. So there's three siblings in our family, and she got us this book that was like 100 ways to save the planet. And it was a kid's book, and it was like turn the lights off, like recycle,
I
like
love
don't
it.
trash on the ground. Yeah, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. If all I have to do is turn the lights off, and I save the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Easy. I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a huge part of it was our mother's influence.
So is that why you've named technically this, this engine Mother?
That's part of it. And then also, yeah, I mean, all of the different, because
Mother
she's like
Earth. Yeah.
pumping, she can do it all, you know, tirelessly.
Yeah. Yeah. Does all the
Honestly,
work. Yeah.
back, if you give just a little bit, she will give, like so much more back.
Yeah.
She will triple, quadruple, she will go all the way for you. Yeah.
So we understand Doc's motivation, but after the 3.5 hour explanation of what he wanted to do, what was it that drove you to say, okay, I can get this? Because it's clear that from a technical perspective, that there's a lot of complexity to what he was focused on and what he wanted to do, and he needs somebody to come back and can explain it to not smart people like me to say this is why you got to get excited. Was that the draw? Because taking I'm thinking about your prior experience in film and being able to make that work, to be able to take really complex stories and transition that into an art form. I would
Hmm.
think that's a natural ability for you. So was that the draw for you, or what was it?
That's one of the draws. I mean, I was incredibly honored that he would trust me.
Yeah,
Having a sibling. Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I would never go
Okay.
into business with them. I'm
I hear
already
that.
jealous of you. You're very lucky. Yeah.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky. Our differences and our similarities just work really well. Really well. He's the oldest and I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
So I think in part, um, it was him, because I knew he had something so phenomenal, And, back when I was working in film, there were, a couple people who, especially when I was just getting started, I was very young. Um, there were a few people that listened to me and gave me advice and kind of helped me along and said, you know what, this is really interesting. Um, and that gave me so much confidence that I was able to just dive in. I just dived into the deep end at that time. And, that's how I was able to, gather all of these skills. It was because people, just seeing you and
Yeah.
believing in you. And so, with Doc, it wasn't just, that I, wanted to give him, a boost. It was because I believe him,
Yeah.
I believe him. And so, bringing my skills over, from my former career definitely helped. The project development and project management and, telling stories, is something that I really thrive on. So, it was a natural, and I was a CEO before, so it was a natural,
Yeah.
it was actually a very natural transition. I just had to, when I started with him, I didn't even know how we got light coming out of a light bulb. Like, of course, I understood light bulbs, and you screw them in, and then you have a light switch. And I knew this talk about the grid, and I saw electrical lines, and I was like, but I didn't know like the specifics
How it
of.
really works. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really kind of had to take a crash course, in learning, just from the ground up. And I'm certainly, there's every day, there's so many amazing technologies that come out and so much advancement, and there's things that I don't even know about. So I've learned to, be able to, understand in a deep level what we're doing with Aeon Blue. But there are things out there that just blow my mind. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So, you might think like, oh, wow, I don't know anything about this, but it always feels like that. And maybe that's just the condition of being human. There's like
Yeah.
so much more,
Yeah.
so much more to know. And
Well,
so much.
that's kind of the beautiful thing, right? Is, I think for a lot of people in terms of their growth, you want to continue to learn about these things, and these are not just trivial things that you're talking about. These things have, significant impact for our future, and so you've got that additional motivation when you look at the technology that you're focused on and the contribution. As I said in your intro, I mean, you are really a true rippler. I mean, you are committed to the making a difference in the planet. You're making the world a better place and contributing this through this application of technology, which I think is just phenomenal. And you can see it in your eyes when you talk about it. You light up because you are that excited and enthusiastic about what you do, and that obviously translates into the business side of the results, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And
And
so,
kind of like one thing I want to go back to that you said, I think is really important for my audience to reinforce and kind of, hear again is when you were in the film industry and you had people taking a chance on you, they were creating positive ripples on your behalf. And you were able to take those lessons learned and bring that back into this venture with your brother. And I think that's just so significant, right? I mean, it's being able to create those ripples and have those ripples ripple on and be able to build someone's confidence, be there to cheer them on and support them, but also get behind them and say, hey, I'm willing to put my other career on hold and come into this thing because I believe so wholeheartedly in what you're doing. I think that's huge.
mhm. Yeah, when somebody makes a pivot like that, it definitely, says something. And my advice is, for anybody who is interested in getting involved in climate tech, or, whether that's software or hard tech, but you don't really know where to start. You might think that, you don't really have the skills. You probably do,
Yeah.
because companies, startups, established companies, it runs the gamut. They need help.
Yeah.
And so, I would suggest that if anybody is like, man, I really want to do this, but I don't know how to get started, think about your skills, put them all down, put that list together and start contacting companies. Cause even if you're just helping out a couple hours a week,
Yeah.
it's amazing what you can do. And I want to instill people with a feeling of power, that they have power in this, and hope because there are a lot of people who, a lot of companies and a lot of people who really care about what's happening. And I think we're gonna turn this thing around. I really
I
do.
love that. And that's great advice. When, let me ask you this question. When people figure out what, the company, what you do and that you're the CEO of this, this company, what are the three things that you'd want people to walk away knowing about what it is that you do and ultimately, the difference that you're trying to make through the technology you're creating?
The three things that I want people to walk away with. Let's see.
And if there's
About
more than three, feel free.
um,
You're like, hey, do we have enough? We have 2 more hours, right?
um, let's see. I think with the mother, um, you know, we decided to go in a very inclusive route and figure out a way to bring the cost down, where that people could actually afford it. Like that,
Yeah.
if companies want to buy carbon credits, they can actually afford to purchase our carbon credits. Or, they want to, people want to purchase our fuel, that they can actually purchase our fuel. So though, so my brother, really created, a technological breakthrough, so that we could get those costs down. And so I think that's a huge part of what we do. And we're tackling it from both sides, because there are e-fuels companies, and then there are CDR companies, which is carbon dioxide removal
Mm-hmm.
companies. And we wanted to put them together, so that we would have the most maximum effect. And it just so happens, we didn't expect it, that we actually reached a huge amount of carbon negativity because of that, and we thought that that was very cool. I guess the second thing is, and I know I just said this, but the general public, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of power. We have a lot of personal power. And if there's something that you want to do, and it doesn't have to be climate tech,
Right.
it doesn't have to be you don't have to go and save the planet.
Yeah.
You don't have to do
It'd be
that,
good if you did, though. I mean,
because we could use you. We could definitely use you.
yeah.
But yeah, and I think that there's this, there is this kind of feeling of, especially since it's such a big, grand problem. There's a feeling from the public that, that they don't really have power in the situation. They don't really know what to do in this situation. And I would say, hey, find the companies that you like, the innovators, like
Yeah.
the ones who are like waking up every single day, and like saving the planet is integrated into their DNA. Support those companies in any way that you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, I don't know. Why don't you give me some sort of, what do you want to hear about? I can, what
Well, yeah, I mean, you actually just sparked it, sparked something that another guest that had been on the Ripple Effect podcast last year, Sandy Stewart, who is also in Austin. I don't know if you know her, but I should connect you. You guys would be two peas in a pod. She is very focused on helping these large corporate entities become, carbon neutral and focusing on what they can do to contribute. And then her encouragement is, and it's very similar to what you just said, which is, as individuals, we have a lot of power. We can vote with our dollars. We can vote with our commitment and our promotion to the companies that are really not just talking a good game about making an impact, or helping this address this climate challenge that we're all facing everywhere in the world, right? But you have the ability to actually uh, promote those companies and be a part of helping encourage that. And part of it comes from you as the individual consumer. Where are you spending your time, your energy, and your efforts, right? And are you with product that really does have a true commitment to the planet? So I think that's really powerful. I guess if I was thinking of a third for you, would be like, what do you need the help with, right? What is because I would think, as an entrepreneur starting in a technology where a lot of people are like, probably where you were during that first meeting with your brother, right? 3.5 hours and still don't get it 100%. But what do you need the most help with in terms of spreading the message, right? How do you want to take what you're doing so that you can get people energized to be singing from the rooftops about what it is that you guys are doing?
Yeah, yeah. Like leveraging, the current, platforms out there, in this modern world, it makes such a huge difference for startups. Like if even just as simple as going on LinkedIn and making a post, which is how we connected,
Yep.
and saying, hey, there's this company, they're making, a drop in replacement for fossil oil, they're capturing carbon. This is awesome because, it's amazing how many people will, they look for, things that are very inspiring and they kind of follow, they go down that
Sure.
rabbit hole, right?
Yep.
And so, we've actually met quite a few investors that way, just by people, just from, word of mouth and someone saying, hey, you guys should just take a look at this company. This is really cool. And so, I would suggest doing something like that. We always need assistance, with interns and things like that. So, if you're interested in, helping out and, you have skills, or connections or, even just passion,
Yeah.
we'll take it.
Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned investors. So is this venture backed at this stage? Or are you still in sort of the seed, stage of growth, or where are you at this point?
We are, so we're angel backed.
Okay.
So we've raised about 1.5 through an angel family, amazing angel family, and then who just, really cares about the planet and really believes in us and Doc. And then, we put about 500,000 of our own funds into this. And so, now we're at the seed stage. So pre-seed.
Yeah.
And so now we're at the seed stage. And so we're raising 6.5 million.
Okay. Okay.
And the 6.5 million will take us all the way from prototype to pilot to being commercially ready, because we are working with with this, with Canadian programs, and, we're starting out in Canada. So yeah.
So yeah, are you looking for? I mean, in the seed round, is how are you going? That I think my audience is always fascinated about these types of things. How do they get involved if they want to become a seed investor, or is there a path for them to be involved at this level as a seed
Um,
investor?
yeah, I think so. I'm not an expert on the SEC rules,
Sure.
but to be an accredited investor, I believe that you have to have a certain. I think you have to make over. I think it's 150,000 a year, and then there's a certain amount of net worth that you need to have. However, seed investors, you might not need to do that. You might not have to be accredited.
Yeah.
Um, so, if you are, if you are, even if you aren't an investor, but you're interested in getting into investing, I think early stage, I mean, that's where companies need it the most. I know
Yep.
that there is the most risk at the early stage,
Yeah.
but that's where companies, really need help.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, one day I will become an investor, and that's what I will do. I will definitely pass it on.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. What are the, so at the stage where the business is today, what are your biggest challenges that you have to tackle this upcoming year?
Okay. It's the funding round.
Okay.
It is, we have everything in place, in terms of, our project development, our engineering, our scale up plan. It's, for our company, it's really just the financing. Last year, and you might know this, last year, there's been some statistics and some articles that have come out, but there was, so VCs really just kind of dropped off the map last year. It
Yeah.
was one of the
Yeah.
hardest years to raise money, like almost 50%, I think, dropped off. It was a significant number. And so, that made it difficult for all companies, not just climate tech companies, but
Yeah.
all companies to get funded. And then women-led companies, it's, it's a bit more dire. It's actually very similar to what it's like in film, for women getting opportunities, and, for directing blockbuster films. So, I hope that is changing. There is a lot of information out there that, because that, technology and the internet and how we've been able to track companies and all the data that we were able to, to gather about, about funding cycles and the way, and what investors fund it, fund, and what those demographics are. There has been a lot of data that's come out that and especially in Europe, that boards, so like Fortune 500 companies that have boards, that the more women they have on the board, the more revenue their company makes.
Yep.
Something up to like, I think over 40% more revenue, because it's statistically proven that when you invest in a woman, or you give money to a woman, she will increase that money, but she will also share it with the community.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also another play on the mother. I think that I really hope that in 2024, more female-led companies will get funded. I'm rooting for you guys out there. I
Yeah,
definitely.
well, I am as well, and I believe wholeheartedly that it has to change, right? And this is, I think now is the time, and so I think what you've said and what you shared is 100% accurate. I think that if you're looking where to put your money and where to back it, some of these female-led companies like yours, are organizations that you got to take a deep look at, because they're making big changes out there, and they're making a difference. And so, my hat's off to you and everything that you're accomplishing on behalf of the company, for sure. Let me ask you, what's your biggest surprise as being a CEO of this emerging tech?
The biggest surprise.
I mean, you were CEO of a different entity, a nonprofit previously, so maybe a little more specifically, what's been the biggest adjustment or surprise that you had to make going from one role as a CEO to this one?
Oh yeah. So the nonprofit that I was a CEO of, so what we did is we assisted female genre filmmakers. So it was fantasy, horror, sci-fi, and action films by women, and we threw events all over the world. And so it was films made by women from all over the world, and it was such an incredible, it was just such an incredible thing to do. I absolutely loved it. I went around and spoke like I was invited by governments and by universities, and by different film festivals, and to go and speak to the audience about the importance of women behind the lens, and women in leadership positions in Hollywood. It's actually it's kind of similar to what I'm experiencing in this role, is that a lot of people, of course, there's a problem with the planet, but at least in terms of female leadership, there's a lot of people don't know, like the general public doesn't, they're like, oh, shouldn't we have already figured that out by now? It's 2023, 2024, what
Yeah.
are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest differences, I have a smaller team right now, although that will change. And so we are, so before I had a staff of about 25, and now we kind of do, the core team is really three people.
Yeah.
So, we have advisors and consultants, and we have engineers. We have about 30 people helping us, kind of jumping in a little bit and saying, okay, like helping us steer the ship. But really it's three main people. And
You got to wear a lot of hats with three main people.
yeah, yeah, to wear a lot of hats. And I think we had to create so much trust between us. We have to completely trust each other,
Yeah.
because we have to depend on each other so much, and we have to really work together as a unit, and we have to be able to pivot, and like if something comes up, or a fire breaks out, then we have to, all hands on deck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's a difference. And then of course the just there is so many amazing innovations happening, and it's happening so fast. Like the technology is evolving so quickly, and I think that's a major difference, because film is pretty much film.
Yeah.
Like you might come out with a new camera, but like there's only so many shots you can do, there's only
Yeah.
so many variations. And a story, when you really break it down, it could just be the same story being told over and over and over
Yeah.
again. And so With this, it's different because, you never stop growing, never stop growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's probably what kind of floats your boat a little bit, right? At the end of the day, once you get that itch of startup, and it's just different from the nonprofit world, right? Because once you have that, there are so many things that you have to do as an entrepreneur. I mean, you go from, really important meetings to taking out the trash at night. That's just the way it is, right? So I totally relate and understand myself. But at the end of the day, it's also probably like the biggest high you ever have. When things are going great, it feels more amazing and more, just more rewarding. And when things aren't going so well, you dig in and fight just that much harder.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it was so funny because um, it depends on your humor, but entrepreneurial funny,
Yeah.
But when COVID happened and everything fell apart, I got out a notepad and I wrote, "How to save our company." Started writing down a list of all the different things that we can do,
Yeah.
you know, because I was like, okay, go back to brass tacks, like go
Yep.
back to square one. And we all did that, individually. And those ideas, that's what helped propel us forward. And so, we're basically, rocking today.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have that in common. I actually did almost exactly the same thing. I journaled a whole bunch of ideas. I have a software company in addition to what I do with Ripple, and I was scared to death for about a day and a half. And then once I had these ideas on board and I could get my team sort of also kind of jamming on the, hey, if this doesn't work out or we stay closed for extended periods of time, here's how we pivot. Here's what we do, and it created innovations that really propelled us forward. And actually, COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to our business, right? So,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
So, yeah, we may have to compare notes at some point, offline about that experience. But yeah, I really
Yeah.
relate to that because it was really important. Let me switch gears and start with. I always like to finish up with a few Ripple-esque questions. They're just kind of fun questions to ask, and they give my audience just a little sense of who you are. Although watching up to this point, I mean, that your personality just pops. I mean, it's awesome. So these should be a lot of fun for you to answer. But what
Okay.
did the 7-year-old Lark want to be?
Ooh. Um, I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh, what?
Hmm.
Okay. What was the inspiration behind that?
So my family was living in New Mexico. We lived near the border of Mexico, and um, we were living in this old farmhouse that was across the street from like a former mining town, like
Uh huh.
built into the wall of the mountain. And so, it's all boarded up and everything, but people would just, kind of drop off their dogs like out in the, like if they didn't want them,
Yeah.
they would abandon their dogs. And so, my parents would come home and I'm like, we adopted a dog. I have a dog club. I already given the dog a bath,
Uh,
set it by the fire. And so and so I love animals, I am a vegan,
yeah.
so I've always really cared about animals, so
That's
that
awesome.
yeah.
I love that.
You're like,
So,
oh man, not another dog,
yeah.
but they were good, they were good.
Oh, what a great story. What a great memory. That's awesome. So were you down close to Las Cruces, New Mexico? I'm from Albuquerque originally, so New Mexico is my homeland.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very close. It was in Alamogordo. I was in La
Yeah.
Ruse.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long did you live in New Mexico?
Oh, off and on for about 11 years.
Okay.
Pretty much through my youth,
Yep.
and it wasn't always in the farmhouse. We kind of moved all over, and then I move away and move back. And then I finally moved away for good when I think it was 17. So yeah, but I've kind
Nice.
of lived all over.
Oh,
But New Mexico is beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Well, okay. So, what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur, in your opinion?
Working with my brother and my best friend.
Is your brother
Awesome.
your best friend, or your best friend also works there?
My best friend also works there. So he
Awesome.
actually was working with me at the nonprofit organization. She was my assistant. And
Oh,
she's just one of the good ones. And you got to hold on to the good ones, like the people.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been working together for over 12 years now. And,
that's fantastic.
yeah, we go everywhere together.
That's
So,
cool. That's really cool. Well, okay, so if you weren't in film and you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing?
oh
Or what would you
man.
like to do?
Uh-huh. I have like 5 careers, like I'm like, that just add that to the list.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'd probably be a pilot.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'd really love to be a pilot.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's a really cool answer. Do you have your pilot's license?
I do not, but I do plan to get one day.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a goal. Yeah, I think pilot would be good. I used to want to be an astronaut. I would love to go to space, and our technology can actually work in space and make fuel in space. So there is that.
yeah.
But I think that if it was just like all of a sudden I had a new career, I think I would probably want to fly,
Uh,
the big things, and yeah.
that's cool. So, for someone who doesn't know Lark Meadow, what would you want them to know about you?
Oh, wow. I have, oh, okay, I could do something. There's a lot of things. Um, I have slightly deformed feet. Hmm. I do. I said it. Yeah.
that that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if you have slightly deformed feet too, no worries.
Yeah, yeah, you've got your tribe. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're all right, but they're just, they're kind of shaped like a high heel kind of thing. So
ah,
yeah. So super weird fact about Lark Meadow
yeah,
is
that I gotta say that's one of the best ones. That might be a Hall of Famer right there. So well done, congratulations. What is the best thing you could hear a client, colleague, or maybe a family member say about you?
um, they would say that I am a wildly determined person, very determined. And I give a lot. I give a lot to the people I love.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And if you had one word to describe yourself, what would you use as that word?
One word. Oh man. Mm, I would say. I mean, I think I think it changes,
Yeah.
through life cycles and yeah, like seasons. I would say as of right now, uh, I would say completely determined.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I am curious what your definition or what you think the ripple effect actually means.
Um, I think that it just takes one person to believe in you, you
That's a
know?
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, and it can affect so many people,
Yep.
you know?
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. Well, what ripple can I look to create for you?
I mean, well, you're already doing it. Uh, so thank you. In the podcast, yeah, I haven't done a podcast in a very long time. And so, back when I was doing film, I was, really, I was doing a lot of stuff like that. But this has been such an enjoyable experience. If you want to post something on LinkedIn, anybody listening, if you want to do something like that, and suggest people go check out our company, even if it's just to your friends. I mean, that's fantastic. That means the world to us.
I love it. Well, speaking of that, that was going to be my next question for you, and a perfect way to wrap up. How do you want people to follow you, or learn about the company, or if you've got social handles that you'd like to share, feel free, and we'll make sure to put these in the show notes as well.
Sure. So, my website or the company's website is eonbluetechnologies.com, and it's AEON, Eon, which means forever blue. technologies.com. And then we have a LinkedIn, so you can go check that out. And I do as well. I'm not on any other social platform except LinkedIn. So my name is Lark Meadow. And I think the Aeon Blue account is I think it's just Aeon Blue. Yeah, but if you find me, then you'll be able to find the company.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely make sure that we put those links in the show notes, and we'll have it, as an overlay for the video when we get this produced. Lark, it has actually been an absolute pleasure. I'm so enamored with what you guys are doing, and I, want to try and find ways to support you any way I can. And we want to make sure that our audience goes out and learns about the company, learns about the technology and Mother and everything that you guys are doing. The world needs, right? So you're stepping up at the right time, and so I think if anybody who hears this podcast might hear it on any of the podcast platforms or sees this on our YouTube channel, please figure out how to get involved and support Lark and Doc and what they're doing, because I think it's fantastic. And so I just want to thank you for that. I mean, thanks for creating the ripples you are for the world.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, guys. We'll be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast very soon. But until then, Lark, ripple on.
I will.
I love it.